Good morning. Welcome to a tertiary world. I'm reading further recollections from having walked down Richardson Street, the 5th East-West Street that I walked down in 2008 in order to gather whatever memories would arise, the first 7. This is the 4th. Its colour is green, the northeastern corner of Richardson and Canning. The wine store on the corner of Richardson and Canning Streets has been there since the mid-60s. Unlike the current store, the original was dark and gloomy and smelled of bottle corks, impregnated with sour red wine. I love that smell, and each time I walked past the store, I only lived a few doors up, I would stop and take a deep breath. The cranky elderly man would always grumble because I invariably stopped without going in. If I didn't want to buy anything, he politely inquired, why couldn't I just have a drink with him? I explained that I was only 17 and that I didn't drink. So what do you drink? He'd ask. Water, I'd reply. He would then make a terrible face and tell me that water was only good for washing your hands. Wine will make you strong. He would repeat the scene each time I walked past, and I would never know whether he had forgotten or simply needed to talk to someone so badly he was prepared to say the same things over and over again. Eventually I went in one day, and though I didn't drink, I listened to his stories and left with half a dozen bottles of Italian wine for my parents. Strangely enough, these days I have to drive past that store to get home. Perhaps I don't have to, but I seem to have settled on this as my preferred route, and occasionally in the last few months I've considered stopping to buy a bottle of wine. So a few nights ago I stopped and walked in. I moved around the shop nervously and couldn't quite settle on a choice of wine. I finally found one I liked, and thinking the shop assistant had noticed my hesitation, I told him that long ago I'd been a regular customer here. In fact, this was the first time I'd come into the store since 1965. That'll be $10.99, thanks. He spat out without looking up as he wrapped the chosen bottle in thin brown paper. I looked around the shop. Suddenly there was the distinct smell of cardboard and cream paint emanating from the bargains being advertised and the cream and pastel decor. I could see a lit computer screen blazing away in the darkened office at the back. A series of brochures lay on the counter next to the cash register, each offering a special deal to people seeking to become members of a wine tasting club, perhaps some of them in faraway holiday places. Suddenly I felt uncomfortably hot, and I knew my heart was racing. I blurted, "No thanks." Just as quickly as he had announced the price for the wine, I held up the neatly wrapped bottle over the cash register until he took it from me without a word and immediately handed me a $10 note. I was tempted to explain myself in some way, but all I could say was, "I've changed my mind, good night," as I turned and walked out into the autumn chill. I stopped at the drive-in liquor store in St George's Road and took the cheapest bottle of wine from the refrigerator cabinet to the man standing behind the counter. He had earphones on. "God, this is great," he yelled. Then he handed me the phones. "Have a listen," he said. I put them on and was instantly flooded by the unmistakable sound of Alice Coltrane. I closed my eyes for a few moments and I could feel myself suddenly smiling. "That wine's on special, by the way," he said as I handed him the phones back. Me, Renato, I promised myself that the first person actually willing to listen to Alice was going to take whatever bottle they were holding in their hot little hands home with them for nothing. It's your lucky night, so thank Alice. I was beaming. I thanked Alice aloud. As I was getting back into the car, I wondered if by any chance the bottle shop attendant was somehow related to the cranky elderly Italian that had long ago run the corner wine shop. Not necessarily through blood, I reasoned, although many Fitzroy and Carlton Italians are all related in some way, but through the way they similarly regarded gifting others with wine as the opening up of a kind of joyfulness. At any rate, they surely, I thought, must be related through a fineness of spirit. The southwestern corner of Richardson and Canning Street. No, I've read that. The northeastern corner of Richardson and Nicholson. If you follow the building on this corner along Reed Street, which is simply the continuation of Richardson Street into the suburb of Fitzroy, you will notice a long, low brick warehouse extending to the narrow laneway leading away from Richardson Street towards North Carlton, past the confusion of sheds and roofs lining its path. For many years there was a notice on top of the single entrance to this building proclaiming it to be home of the Club dei Soli, or the Club of Single People. This could possibly be translated as the Club of Lonely People, for soli in Italian can mean both lonely and single. But I never saw anyone entering or leaving the club through the store, or as befits a club for lonely people, whoever was inside was most likely alone. I often wondered what activities might have constituted the life of this club, what its members might have been occupied with. I imagined single men sitting in chairs doing nothing much, with the smell of ancient aftershave floating slowly, imperceptibly through the vast space. I imagine an invincible melancholy pervading the surface of the club's inside walls. Even its outer walls never seemed to receive any sunlight, as the angle of the sun, both in summer and winter, never permitted this act of great intimacy. Now the building has been incorporated into the refurbished trattoria at the corner and serves as a function room. I keep wondering, though, what they might have found in there when workmen finally entered to renovate the place. A diary in a corner, perhaps, or many diaries spread through its endless nooks and crannies, each dedicated to a deep reflection upon its single year, with the entry for each of its days proclaiming at the very top of the pages in each diary, in a steady, illuminated script: Oggi son membro dei soli, or today I am a member of those that are alone. The reading of these stories is not an end in itself. It's an act of sharing a fragment that, though in itself might not have great significance, it perhaps can open up somehow the value, somewhat disputable, of sharing our lives with others. So I have no illusions about either the literary or the philosophical or the anecdotal value of what I'm reading to you. But it's an act of reaching out that might have that might be echoed in some way, that might have some relevance to you and others. Beyond all of that, I've become addicted to reading my stories to you. So there I go, trying to rationalize something that I find has great value for me. Until tomorrow, where I will continue to do what I've been doing.